Okay, thank you for coming. So my name is Ken Baylor, and we're going to be talking about the Zeus botnet. Um, the session is in two parts. So the first part, a lot of it will be theory, but we also will go through the botnet itself, what it can do, what it can't do. And for the second part, what I'd like you to do is once we demo how to build a bot and actually configure it, you can go deploy it. It's pretty easy. I mean, the only idea of having the server is really two things. One, it's a place for people to get infected, and it's also a great place to see what happens when they do become infected. So, the first question we talk about Zeus and all this good old-fashioned stuff is, well, why should I care? Obviously, you got that because the room is pretty packed. So, but just in case you didn't go there, let's move along. So Zeus has got millions of victims. I mean, many millions of victims. One of the beautiful things about Zeus is it's a kit. So if you really knew what you're doing, which hopefully you should after today, or if you want to even learn more, one thing we're probably going to end up doing in Las Vegas, Black Hat, is get into web injects and how to actually, successfully do something against the bank, take a standard site and work at it. But everything else other than that, we'll probably cover today. For individuals, it's already on multiple millions of PCs, and it's part of general botnet activities such as DDoS and spam. Many of you probably know that when the mega upload issue occurred, many people went on there to support Anonymous, and they tried to download the low orbit ion cannon and end up getting infected by Zeus. A lot of people use this because it's worth a lot of money to a lot of people. One of the things that Zeus does is you can create your own botnets and sub-botnets and sub-sections. The control panel that you see is very, very scalable. If you don't know what you're looking for, you can cast a wide net, and suddenly you end up with, oh, this guy's in a bank, this guy's in the military, this guy's in X, Y, and Z. You can start sub-segmenting it out pretty well. And it steals all your private information on an individual level. Now, many people have got, their financial documents, very private photographs and videos, and those sort of things are basically sucked up and thrown out to the rest of the world. Maybe they'll end up on Pastebin. Or what we've seen actually in the last 2 months, there's been a major amounts of the ex-Soviet crime lords have been breaking into people's email accounts from a normal infection on their home machine. Then they're going on, they're getting their financial credentials. In some cases, especially with complex passwords that corporations are enforcing, they're now emailing themselves their passwords. So they're going through there, looking for the word password, looking for the login, and then they're logging in and doing a lot of wires. That has become very big in the last month. And on my phone, I probably have about 20 examples of that in the last day. So on the corporate world, so everybody's talking about advanced persistent threats. It's the big bad boogaboo, right? Many of you know who studied the RSA that the remote access tool, or RAT, that was used was not that complicated at all. And Zeus itself is an amazingly effective advanced persistent threat tool. Now, a lot of the APT tools that are out there are really old. And the great thing about Zeus, especially with its latest incarnations, things like Citadel, is it's thriving because the financial community is trying to track it down and crush it and kill it. So it's constantly evolving. When that occurs, the chances of a corporation finding it and that is really low. I mean, you always go where the money is. Right now, the money is in Zeus. You'll see the statistic later on, but it's been, despite the fact Zeus has been going crazy for the last 2-3 years, it's roughly about 80% of all attacks on U.S. banks. There's some spy eye in there, comes and goes, and there's all the latest, greatest fandangle stuff, but really Zeus is the beast, and you'll see why in this talk. So for financial accounts, this stuff is U.S.-centric, but there's a lot of it in common. So in the U.S., when you have your money stolen, it depends whether you get your money back on two things. One, are you an individual? Or two, are you a non-individual? So an individual is covered by the U.S. law under a thing called Reg E, and that means if your money's stolen, you'll get it all back. Literally the bank will cover you. It has to by law. If you were annoying to them, they will probably charge you $50. If you're really annoying them, and this is like your 25th time being infected, in that case, you'll probably get charged a full $500. But at the end of the day, you get it all back. If you're a business, you end up in the joyful world of Universal Commercial Code 4A. And I am a recovering attorney. I will apologize to you all. And 2 weeks ago at RSA, I had to sit in a panel with 2 federal judges talking about whether banks should be liable. The bottom line is most of the time banks will accept it because they don't want to lose the relationship. We're talking lots of money. A very small loss of $10,000, a big loss, and I've seen some scary ones, running across have been like 3.8 million. That's a very big loss. And so that's a kind of a very iffy case. There's been a bunch of hit the legal world in the last 2 years. Two cases were decided in the last 12 months. One said the bank was at fault, the other guy said the customer is at fault. And then the FFIC, which is an overseeing bank or overseeing of banks, came in and said, hey guys, get your act together. Some of you guys are producing really, really crap defenses. And in the Comerica case, they actually had good defenses, but nobody was actually looking at the security tools because, that costs money. Security people cost money, right? Let's just buy the tool and not ever get around to looking at it. How does fraud happen? You guys would know the term very nicely, but how we're defining malware is pretty much any malicious software. We won't get into specifics. Well, is it technically a Trojan? Is it technically a worm? Is it blah, blah, blah? So we'll just kind of define it as that. And the main thing here is Zeus is about 80% of attacks. Now, we've seen lots of customized versions of Zeus being used in APTs as well. They started being leaked out. Again, there are no statistics on that. And one thing as well, from talking to other people in the banking community, the US example is pretty common. If you're an individual, generally globally, you will be covered. If you're a corporation, you may or may not be. If you're a small bank and you lose $1 million, you will probably go out of business as a bank because most of their profits are 4 or 5 million. When we start getting into litigation, you're already dealing in the millions, and things are bad. We were in Abu Dhabi in December. Abu Dhabi is an area where they do a lot of their banking on the phone, or else they do it in person. So Black Hat got interested in Abu Dhabi. About a month before Black Hat showed up, somebody else got interested in Abu Dhabi, and that was the Zeus crew. There's a major crew which created it called the Jabber Zeus crew, and they hit United Arab Emirates and they cut it wide open. So about 30% of all Zeus attacks right now are going on in the Arab Emirates. And you say, well, that's okay. Not my problem. But of course, they get this money and they fund and they fund and they fund. We're going to have a look at the vast amount of work they've done in 2011. 2011, beforehand, you had a grip on Zeus. Start of 2012, pretty much game over. And of course, that's what they called the new version. So our friend Zeus started showing up around 2007. Those of you in the Trend Micro world might say, oh no, it came around in 2005. But what it really came out in 2007 is it started getting really, really stealthy and really focused against banks. In about 2009, we started seeing the capability to overcome dual-factor authentication, which is those RSA or Vasco keys. I mean, all those sort of things are a joke. So version 1 of it is free. You can still get it out there. Version 2 is heavily locked down. There is a proviso, and that's in May last year. The Zeus source code leaked, as in all of it, and that's what we're working on here today. Now, because it's gone out there and leaked, everybody and their uncle is converting it, and you've probably heard of ICE 9, and the newest one out there is Citadel, but there's a whole bunch of changes. So before this, a lot of the crews were primarily Ukrainian and Russian, and what we've seen since then, we've got Hungarians, Romanians, Bulgarians. We have people where I'm from in California, and we know who they are. But it's generally proliferating like crazy. So let's have a look at some of the functionalities that came in 2011, because they made a huge, huge difference. So if you logged into your bank account originally, and this was a keylogger, Zeus 1 is primarily a keylogger. Okay, so you logged in, used your Vasco token or whatever, your credentials might be fresh for 30 seconds. But of course, if you're in California, our Russian friends are asleep. When they wake up, they've got the key logs, and of course the key has expired, so it's kind of annoying. No use to them whatsoever. One of the things they started bringing in was Jabber. So Jabber uses that instant messaging protocol from Google and will actually pop up on your desk right there and then, boom, we have a live active account. Now on the control panel, it's capable, especially if you've got what we call a leprechaun panel, you can just right click and take over the machine. You can steal the credentials from it, and we'll have a look at what way they did it in the start of 2011 and the way they're doing it now, because the game has changed quite a bit. Some of the new plugins are really good, and VNC is really the big game changer. So in the old days, they stole your credentials and they still logged in from the Russian box, and the banks would see that. And now they're coming in through VNC, and a lot of the device protections just don't work at all. This was a picture of a stack of cash sitting inside one of the places of the Zeus botnet crew that they took down, and so far one crew has really been taken down. That's it. Just lots of stuff in there. How big is it? Honestly, we don't know. A lot of the stories are, sort of 9.5 million here, another 3 million there, another 20 million here, on and on and on it goes. People start saying it's somewhere around 750 million a year that's stolen. It's like head and shoulders over everything else. It's at least 200 million. So, it's real money. No, yeah, there we go. And that was 2 years ago. Zeus really got interesting in the last year and a half. So this is one of the crews that they took down. This is the information that we had on them. They used to take 1 to 4 victims a day, about 100,000 per victim, and after about 1 million a week they went after. And they got tried for 180 million, and they got over about 85 million. And that was more than all the physical bank robberies. And that was one crew. The crew were pretty much based in London. They had a bunch of mules that were based in New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. And they had a highly, highly encrypted network. One of the things we tell people in banking is use a dedicated PC for your financial transactions. Anybody heard that one before? All right, or if you're using military-grade encryption or military-grade protection, use your machine for that and do nothing else. So if you're running a crime network and you're pulling in, 85 million in 9 months, that's a pretty dedicated box, right? What you do not do is do stupid things like surf the unencrypted internet with it, which they did. And they were being monitored, and they got a nice knock on the door, which were the friends down the bottom right going in with a big battering ram, and that was their big takedown. So that was a big, big, big one, and where they came from. It's just to understand why Zeus is so important and, why it's such a big one. Anybody know who a J1 mule is? So J1 is a working visa. You can come over from Europe, work in the States for 6 months. It's a reciprocating visa, and a lot of them are using fake passports, creating bank accounts, and about a week before their visa expires, getting very large amounts of money, like 40,000 sent into them, and they'll have 10 different accounts. So, 10 different accounts, probably 3 different IDs. So you can end up with like $1 million, and then you clear out your money and get on your plane fast. So an example of the business account takeover, and they're just giving you a background here. We'll get into the fun stuff really soon. Is, this is a 2009 example, but Zeus comes in all sorts of and shapes and sizes. End up with a password stealing Trojan. That would never work today, not like happened in RSA last year. When somebody logs in, they get infected. The online credentials were sent originally to the criminal, and then the criminal would log in, steal the money, and send the money to money mules. The money mules, again, money mules are a very different animal than the Zeus crews. The Zeus crews focus on deploying it. There's a certain Slavic, or Monster is the guy who created Zeus originally. He's a very different guy. He works for one crew and one crew only. Then he resells to other crews. The crews are involved with deploying, or even then they outsource it now to a lot of pay-per install people, and they manage what comes in. Then they send it off to a third group of people, again, who they have no reaction or relation with. And when they did have a relation with them, they tended to get them caught, was the whole mule network in the last one. And so in the old days, what they would do is they would phone up somebody or who they trusted and say, I have full access right now to a bank account. It's about 100,000, or I need 10 mules to transfer the money out. You generally send it under $10,000, because when you send over $10,000, a little, triple alarm goes off in the background and people start asking questions. So in the old days, they had to call up people, and there's generally a big, long delay. Zeus changed in the last year. It can now talk to an open source database and get the next 10 mules. Just go boom, 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 and auto-populate and auto-send. Now, the money that goes to the mules, they're generally phoned up and said, hey, you need to get down to Rabobank or wherever it is right now, and they will tell you right now is really right now. Collect the money and send it out via Western Union or MoneyGram to the bad guys. And about a month later, that money ends up on the Zeus crew's doors. And the mule handlers themselves make about 50% of the money. And quite honestly, a lot of times the money leaves the bank, but the banks trust other banks to freeze it. So at the end of the day, as far as they're concerned, they sent $1 million out, and they may see 2% of it, 10% of it, half it, no clue. So there's a lot of trust that these guys have. As far as they're concerned, they move the money, but they never know when, whether the mule handlers ripped them off or whether the banks intercepted it. Now on to our fun, our tool today, Zeus. It just works. It is a lovely little piece of malware. There we go. Leave me alone. Okay, so Zeus can, and this is actually a quote. It said malware from the FFIEC, which is that governing body that oversees all the banks. It basically said malware, and they were referring to Zeus specifically, can potentially defeat all consumer, and they really also meant customer, which includes the corporate facing security measures. This stuff is really, really sharp. It works on Windows 7, XP, Vista, and other server models. It's not on the Mac yet. There's a guy called Andreas Baumhoff. Any of you heard of him? He's a guy, Australian, from a company called Trust Defender, and he's created a proof of concept for the Mac, so even they're not safe. It's primarily originally a keylogger, and it does session writing, which is stealing the credentials with Jabber with the instant message. To do that, we're going to look at some of the form field injection, displayed balance, and then we're going to get on to the fun part. Keylogging itself sucks because of the time delay, and it doesn't really overcome two-factor authentication. A lot of the attacks that have been in Europe to date, a lot of them are version 1.24, which is a version that leaked about 2 years ago, and it does not do multi-factor authentication well at all. It has a lot of signatures, and that's what a lot of the banks are saying. They're the ones that you're able to swat like a fly. It's the new versions they can't get. So, bottom line here is keylogging, it's okay. Very, very old school, and after about 2010, pretty much useless. So one of the things we wanted to be able to do is interact with the user. And one of the ways of doing that is a thing called form field injection. So Zeus overcomes or just bypasses HTTPS and all that. So what it does is it changes the HTML that's sitting in front of you. So you might be all encrypted, get all your stuff across, and then it will say, hey, here's a pop-up conversation with you, which will say something along the lines of, yeah, your authentication failed. I want to get another set of credentials. Or it'll say, we need to validate who you are. You need to answer these 5 security questions. And again, we'll see how to do those things. So code injection is the fun ones. So they generally ask you a lot of information. This is important as well for sometimes when they want to impersonate you by phoning up, they'll need other information on you, such as your national ID number, all these kind of personal questions like your wife's best friend, credit card, ATM numbers, and PINs. You've seen a lot of that. And of course, the problem is banks are locking down security. So when this thing pops up, it looks really like, hey, it's legit. And what it does is it produces real-time communication. So there's a subsection of this called Leprechaun, where they can literally, they intersect the bank, they get a question, such as, hey, what is your wife's best friend's name? You don't have a clue, or they don't have a clue. So they pop the question directly to you, and you're just going along looking at your account balance, and it says, bank needs to authenticate you further. What is this? You answer it back, and it's real forward conversation. We have some great packet captures of these, and they're very, very effective. I think this morning we're talking about how the malware is moving up in the layers. That's definitely true, and this is all about layer 8, the users, and it's pretty good. So session writing, the whole stealing of passwords and logging in again. One of the things Zeus does, it steals cookies. It also steals flash cookies. It does this by default. If you have any certificates, it steals it by default. So it's pretty much ready to go, provided you don't disable those things when you set it up. So generally, they just wait until you log in. Once you log in, they get their Jabber session, right-click, and they're pretty much in. Now, on the basic Zeus panel, you don't have that. For that, you need the advanced one, which is the Leprechaun panel. With the other Zeus panel, you can back connect in using VNC. When you have the VNC, you can control a secret window that the user cannot see. You've taken over their screen. You can open up new sessions, and they do not see their cursor move. They do not see the new tabs that have opened up. So form field injection, again, HTML on the fly, and you can get lots of extra information. Now, what we've seen in the last couple of weeks is, well, actually, in the last 3 months, all the banks have gotten banners which pop up and say, we will never, ever, ever ask you for your credentials. Of course, what they've ended up doing, and we've seen this in Dubai and a bunch of other places, and I'll show you the screenshots in a minute, they've basically rewritten those saying, oh, well, we generally don't ask you for that information, but no, for extra security measures, we're asking you once off. And people are clicking, okay, no problem, and they're sending it right off there. Now, one of the big issues when you steal money is people know their money's gone. So one of the first things the Zeus brought in was balance manipulation. So if you think you should have, 500 euros in your account, and suddenly you have 100 euros, you're going to be a little bit upset. So what it does is, originally what it started off is when you were sending out money, it would intercept you might say, I'm sending it to my local telco for 50 euros. Well, what it will do is it'll take that, change the name, send it off to somebody else, and change that for 450 euros. Now, when you come back the next day, you're going to see your money's gone. So what it does is it basically creates a little cookie and does the maths on the fly, thinking it'll fill in who you think you sent the money to and what your balance should be. And every time you're on that machine, that's the number you're going to get. It's only when you go on another machine you'll see it. Mule stuffing is this, these are all things that started coming up near the end of this, started coming up around the end of 2010 before things started getting really interesting. And some of the things we're going to talk about on the 2011 breakthroughs, they're all on the version of Zeus that you have. Mule stuffing again, collect a bunch of money, send it to everybody automatically, and the whole idea here is velocity of money. When money moves, it's generally a race between when the bank can contact the other bank and say freeze the funds, and when the mule people can pick up the phone, call their people and say, get the money out right now. Literally, it comes down to minutes, and minutes are very, very important here. Okay, 2011, great year for Zeus. So this is the way malware worked last year. You basically had the individual user would log in, authenticate, and the credentials were sent over to the Zeus command and control server. Then they basically steal those credentials and click in and go directly to the bank, which is over on your left side. Now, and then after that, they send the money out to the mules. So Zeus 2 was a big one. It started using polymorphic encryption. So Zeus 2 is what you have on your machines. You can set individual keys, and quite often what it can do is each encryption of it on your machine is unique. Some of the things about it are it installs in at the user level. Again, we'll talk about this in a minute. But there's really no signatures for this stuff because, there's signatures for some of the basic versions, but probably 90% of them get on by, and they're very targeted. So let's have a look and see if this situation happened last year, what the bank would say. So we see this person suddenly logged in, their national or their IP address is completely changed. They were in the US, now suddenly they're in Moldova. Simultaneous sessions with different IP addresses and very different IP addresses. The keyboard language changes maybe from English to Russian. Browser language changes from English to Russian. And the PC fingerprint, which is that advanced, thing that a lot of times banks run, which is the JavaScript, which will give them a unique fingerprint every time. That changes, and the PC time zone changes. So because of that, about December, Zeus, like the amount of money that was coming into Zeus dropped like a stone. It was really, really bad. So they got busy. Why? Because there's a bunch of money. So these are the things that came in, and they're all built inside the version that you have. And this is the background is to understand why what you have and what we're going to do is as effective. It came in with Jabber, came in with polymorphic encryption. So every time there's a Zeus install, it should be completely different, even if you all got infected right now from the same command and control structure, and their signatures should not match for any of you. So it's just like good old-fashioned cancer. Each one's got its own same cause but different results. Started getting into fast flux peer-to-peer because how many of you have heard of Zeus Tracker? Yep, all right, a few in there. So Zeus Tracker tries to track down where the Zeus command and control machines are. So then they talk to a lot of security companies, and if you find a machine in your network is talking to one of the Zeus command and control servers, guess what you've probably got. And it beats, it's not a bad way of doing things. So what they've decided to do is get peer-to-peer, fast flux, sort of constantly changing. So the idea of connecting into a command and control server, they're going to try and put a couple of layers in between there so you don't know where they really are. And it's pretty effective. Of course, these trackers have also stepped up, and we'll talk about that one in a minute. Problem with Zeus as well is it keylogs everything by default, which is something a lot of people don't get. If you look at a lot of documentation on Zeus, we'll say you'll have to specifically name a site for it to keylog. Not true. So the problem, if you're a financial criminal, you have hundreds or potentially thousands of people babbling on Facebook, and you have to go through there and go through there and go through there and go through there. So one of the things they ended up doing was, like the command and control servers only don't have infinite hard disk. They'll give you a list of banks and say everything else, don't upload it to the server. So that's kind of one of the things that gives them, again, more effective information. That's their target site list. And now one of the big changes that occurred last year is Zeus and the mobile are good friends. We've seen two versions that have come out. So Zeus and SpyEye are competing. They're both set up by Russian groups. Originally, when SpyEye came out, it would actually uninstall Zeus and it would take over, and they didn't get along very well. So remember that Operation Trident Breach we saw where they took down one of the big Zeus crews? That was very close to the main Jabber Zeus crew. So Monster, the guy who actually created Zeus, said, okay, I'm done at this point. I'm going to hand over my source code to the SpyEye, and they're going to eventually merge. And we've seen some of that. What we have also seen is that he's actually still working for that crew, and he's still developing his own one, but he's just not reselling it anymore. But one of the things that has changed is banks have decided that phones are great second factor authentications. So whenever you want to move money, you'll send a code or something to your phone, then you enter that in your computer and it's out of band and it's all good and perfect. Well, that was a good plan, but of course, they figured the way around that one too. So one of the things we're going to talk about later on is a thing called Zeus in the mobile, which basically, whenever you send an SMS message to your phone, it recognizes it's from a bank, it picks it up and it forwards it to the fraudster's number, and it then deletes it from your own phone. So bottom line, they can initiate a transaction, the SMS can go to you, be immediately wiped before you ever see it or even knew there was a transaction. They enter it in and the bank says, oh, this is great multi-factor authentication, I completely trust this. And you've got one version for Zeus and one version for SpyEye. They actually started surfacing in Spain, of all strange places, first. And then one of the big areas that banks are also leaning on is an area called dual custody. Dual custody is one of you can initiate a money movement, but somebody else on a different machine, hopefully, also has to then approve it. So the idea is you both log in. So maybe we've got 10 wires of a couple of $1 million to go out there. Now, even if they compromise my account and they create a wire, the other person's going to look at it and go, oh, this is really strange. I shouldn't be sending all this money to Russia. So what they've done is, again, through social engineering, they pop up on the screen. They say something along the lines of, when you log in, oh, your authentication has failed. We need somebody else to come over who's a valid user to ensure you are who you say you are. So, of course, they come over and then they pop up a nice, congratulations, we've unlocked your account. What has actually occurred is when you logged in, they created a wire for a couple of thousand. When the other person came in to unlock your account, they approved it and the money's gone. And of course, with the balance manipulation capabilities and the more, when you fully flesh out your Zeus, when you look into your account, everything looks normal. So where are we today? We're pretty much here. The credentials are going back to our good friends, but they're then connecting into a remote VNC. So when they come into a remote VNC, they're coming into a hidden window on the end user's machine, and then they're connecting in directly to the bank. So, and they can also use socks for transferring things in. We're going to talk a little bit about back connect as well and what that means. So when you use socks or remote VNC, some of the things we see is the transaction we can definitely tell in the bank comes from the genuine PC. You've got the same IP address, same language, same screen characters. If we have a device fingerprint where we look at things like your time zone, your MAC address, everything you name it in the world, as far as we're concerned, it's absolutely the same. So, if you're sitting in a bank right now, you've got all of this to rely upon. So yeah, currently the round 2 is going to the Zeus cruise. So, the banks have come up with a bunch of new things, but if you've invested in several $1 million worth of vendors' products in the last 2 years, it's probably already obsolete. Our good friend Zitmo, which is Zeus in the mobile. Now, a common example, this is how you get infected with it. Again, it's done through social engineering. So you log onto your mobile, you log onto your bank, you get a nice little pop-up and says, hey, you haven't registered your mobile phone with the bank, you need to do this for secure transactions. So you say, okay. The pull-down screen will ask you, what's your number and what's your type of phone? You type that in, and you get sent a SMS link, you click it, and you end up with something like this. So again, they're picking on our good friend's trust area, where you go and say what kind of phone you have. Again, you should have already been confirmed at this point, and you go and install in your Zeus in the mobile. Zeus in the mobile, then, whenever you get an SMS from your bank, will automatically forward it to the fraudster's phone. And as far as you're concerned, you're out of the loop at that point. You're done. And the last defense would say is dual custody. Again, that idea of somebody approves and somebody else gets it. This is an example we got in a bank in California about 3 months ago, where you get the security challenge. They generally either give you Our banks updated the security of your data for security reasons. I love that phrase. It's the reason why we get strip searched by the TSA every week. Your user ID is put on hold, and you've got to reactivate it by logging in as somebody else. The other one they're using now is there's been a big push in the banking world to do behavior anomaly testing, which is, sort of a black art, to say the least. And they're saying you've got some behavioral anomaly and you need to validate it. But it's usually one of these two themes. So some things we've seen over in this example of a web inject, these are ones that we've seen right now in the Arab Emirates. So this is a real site. The main thing you've got to do there is enter in your username and password. Now, in Dubai, they absolutely live on their mobile phones. And when you call in to get authenticated, one of the main authentication factors is you give them your username and your password, and you give them your phone. And of course, phone spoofing is completely impossible, so that could never happen. So one of the first things they've done, and this is one of the ones we got, is please enter your registered phone number. And again, this is a simple web inject where that little field magically now pops in. And that's coming from the Zeus on your machine. If you're looking at it, you've got your encrypted padlock, all that good stuff. All that did come across. It just shoved in that extra field. Strangely enough, when you do hit the submit button, in a lot of cases, that extra field is sent back to the bank. And if the bank is intelligent, it'll say, that's weird, I didn't ask for that. I should be able to throw up a flag. But 90% of banks don't do that. Another example of banner rewriting, I like this one. This is Riyadh Bank. And if you read the security alert down there, it says, Riyadh Bank will never send to its clients any email messages requesting ID password or other personal security details or email links. What it ended up as was, due to recent security alerts, Riyadh banks require certain clients to promptly respond to email messages requesting user ID, password, etc. And then they said where it came from. Interesting enough, Riyadh Dash Bank is very different than Riyadh Bank. So they put in the extra dash, and I think they ended up actually owning the domain as well, which was kind of cute. Another example they did, which is another one of those we saw over there. You got protect your financial identity down at the end. The standard stuff of we will never, ever, ever do this. And then, of course, they changed it to, there's a one-time registration. If you haven't gotten our spam email, click here and we'll take your one-time security passwords. So that is the background on Zeus and why it's important. So again, this thing is very important in advanced persistent threats. We're going to start going off and playing with it. So those of you who have not gotten it yet, this is where to get it. So hopefully you'll build this thing out in a virtual machine. You can connect to the Zeus demo wireless hotspot. It should have no authentication. And you can SCP in using Windows or whatever you want. And that's your credentials. And you should be able to download that. Again, for those of you who do have a Windows machine, just go and get the Zeus demo folder. So I had a few. They're floating around the place. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so what I'll do at this point, how many of you can download it and how many of you think we should take a break for like 10 minutes while you get it? Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break. If those of you who want to come up to me, I will disconnect here for a while and give you I'll build out a couple of keys. So we'll restart in 10 minutes and then we'll go over building out Zeus. This is to where we're going, and we're going there pretty fast. So Zeus basics, it keylogs everything by default. Do not believe what you've read elsewhere. Now there's a special file called web injects list, and the web inject is where you can manipulate HTML locally and it will change how things work. So remember where they popped in that extra box, or they said, hey, originally if you looked at what you ended up with last year, you ended up with basic HTML and your little extra form field. Not now. You end up with these really, really JavaScript rich programs. So they've changed a lot. It copies your digital certs by default. Now virtual keyboards are those little things that are A, B, C, D. They pop up and you have to click them. They are insultingly simply defeated. Use the @ symbol in front of a web name and it will capture every click of the mouse. And again, we'll have a look at that. So it's comprised of the following parts. You've got a command and control server. You can put it on anything you want. I've had it on OS X, I've had it on Linux, had it on Windows. And it's actually pretty easy to set up on Windows, but sometimes the file permissions get a little bit screwy. Linux is the more stable. Web injects files, and again, there are companies, companies that specialize in nothing but manipulating web injects files. So you'll say, I want to compromise a bank, or in a lot of cases now it's things like, I want to compromise the US Department of Defense, or I want to compromise some company's website. So they want to be able to change it and create it in such a way that the HTML looks interactive and believable, but it will capture information that can be used to get into your company or wherever else it wants to go. Some of the letters there are then the config file is composed of static and dynamic entries. The static is actually compiled into the bot. So when you get infected, it actually knows the basic things like, okay, what's my name? How do I talk to the control and command server? And it tells you where it is, and it tells you what the encryption key is. The version you have uses RC4 over port 80. So you're basically going to see port 80 traffic, nothing suspicious about that. It's kind of encrypted, not using HTTPS, but in a lot of, pretty much most companies will just let you outbound port 80 to anyone who you want to talk to. Now the static does that, and the dynamic you can update, and we'll see that as we go on and build our bot. ZSB is the bot builder. Those of you can start browsing to that now once you start going through it. And there's a folder I think called server, and that's actually I think called back connect. So back connect is any of you use back to my Mac on your Mac? All right, so again, how does that stuff like that work? Or just like log me in, it's all the same stuff. You have a machine that's sitting behind NAT. So how do you get to it when you want to remotely control it? Well, you create a daemon that jumps out somewhere else, and whenever somebody connects to that, they can come back in and see your screen right away. So some of the things in back connect you do are you can send the back connect for port 3389, which is RDP, or else for VNC, which is 5900. So that's the back connect server. We're probably not going to use that part. It's trivial to set up. You just need a more complex network. So how does it work? There are no admin privileges to install. So it's language, it's Visual C++, and bot's based on intercepting one API, and it comes in a user mode. And you could have 10 different users, all infected, and they would all have their own personal version of Zeus, and which would not be aware of each other except when they're logged in. The bot runs under Vista, Windows 7, with enabled user access control and without the use of local exploits. Now, when we infect, we're actually going to be asked to run it. But in a lot of cases, you'd have a crime pack or a paper installed. We just shove the stuff in there using an exploit. Here, we're just going to say, okay, for the moment, I'll run it just for the sake of it. It intercepts HTTP and HTTPS requests. So this thing works on Internet Explorer, and it works on Firefox. Newer versions also work on Chrome and pretty much everything else in Safari and the whole lot. It's got a lot of protections inside there. So it's got unique names, to annoy the anti-malware companies. And once it installs, it deletes itself. The actual installer is gone. And if you try and copy that and install it under a different UUID, it won't work. And it auto-updates and doesn't need to be rebooted, and it monitors itself. Okay, the gory stuff. Config files and web injects. We're mostly going to be playing with the config file today. So if you look inside your folder, you should have a config file in there. And this is a little bit modified, but it's important what each of these parameters do, so it's worth walking through it. The entries up the group, they have a group called static config and dynamic config. There are two major breaks. So the static config is compiled into the bot binary and generally does not change. If you want to change what's here, you tell it to update the bot. You give it a name. Black Hat's not a bad name. And it says timer config 61. So generally it's the first parameter is when to do it, and the second parameter is if you failed, when to do it. So it says talk to the command and control server every 60 minutes. If that fails, retry every minute. Timer logs, it's you go again, upload your logs every, whatever, and if that fails, try again every minute. Here we want a kind of a constant, see what's going on. We might change it to 1-1. Timer stats is send information on who the victim is, open ports and screenshots. And again, send them every 20 minutes. And that's the beautiful thing. All you need to do is right click here and say, I want to see the screen that you're on right now. Because if I've got my antivirus up or, or whatever, you can just right click and have a quick notice of what's happening. Remove certs equals 1. Hey, got certs. Sure, let's see them. And the encryption key here is very important. The encryption key, which you set in the bot, is how it communicates to the command and control server. So generally you're going to have, unless you've got multiple instances running, the same encryption key on there, although the botnets might be different. So if you're a master bot or a bot herder and you're selling your bots to, a bunch of guys, you might all have the same encryption key. And again, you're going to give them a compiled bot. You're not going to give them the config file. They never would see that, but they'd all have different botnet names. And they'd be able to log in and see their own personal botnets. Now it comes to dynamic config. So the URL holder, such as like, where's my new bot? So when I need to get a new version of the bot, where do I go? And the gate.php is very important. That's where the command control server is. So again, you can rename all of these things, either default names. And the webinjex file, and the webinjex is the file where if you want to take out certain banks or whatever you want to do and do advanced HTML manipulation, that's where you change it. Then what happens in the horror day of somebody takes down very rudely your command and control structure? That would be very upsetting. Well, one of the things it can do is, here it's got a, where else do I go? So say, for example, my original control and command server is down, where else should I go? And that's the, where's my running backup under advanced configs? Then we start getting into web filters, and this is a cool little sub notification things. If you have an exclamation mark, you ignore the website, you don't log anything. If you have an @ then you start taking pictures for every time you click. Why is that important? Some banks, rudely enough, have gotten these virtual keyboards so you don't type in anything. So every time you click on the letters of your password, it actually gives you that picture, a picture, a picture, a picture, and you can just, look at your 7 pictures and boom, thank you very much, I've got your password. The web inject, we're not going to screw around with this one that much today because it's a lot of HTML playing around with. But let's have a look at what it looks like. This is an example of going after one of the British banks, Barclays, and it's saying set your URL HTTPS. So whatever I'm doing a get or a post, that's what a GP means. Basically capture it. And then it says, so what it does is it says, look at the HTML, and so it looks for a certain spot and says, okay, at this point, so set before, which means like when you come across this phrase in the HTML, then inject this part right here. And that's where the whole data before is. And then you start putting in what you want, and then you say data end, and then there's all your data you put in there. So the bottom line in this situation of this code, anybody can guess what it does? So just very simply puts in the UK, have a little password, a special secret ninja password that apparently is their authentication that only you're supposed to know about, and you would share it with the bank, and the bank is asking you for that. And that'll be very helpful if they're phoning in later on because they need to change a few things. So those things we're going to play with on our Windows machine before we compile our bot. The building bot is very simple. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to run through that one. So we're going to, first of all, figure out where our config file is. Then we're going to edit it, and we're going to probably change a couple of things. Build a bot configuration, which is, and we can call it anything we want. Bin is the normal suffix, but you can make it JPEG or something where it becomes quite innocent. And then you build a bot executable, which generally ends in exe. And then you're pretty much good to go. At that point, you pick them up, and you drop them over to your command and control structure, wherever you said they are going to be, and then you go and infect a few things. We'll have a look at, so the command and control is run by web, and this is pretty much your encryption report filtering. The all-important box there is where you set your encryption key. If you change that, your bots will not know how to talk to you. So it has to match. Now, then there's, if you want to do, again, this is one of the more, this is where you write your scripts, and here we've got priming the botnet. So these are scripts that when you connect in every few minutes, you will say, hey, is there any new configs? Is there any scripts I need to run? And this situation, you're probably sitting behind that using an outgoing request. And it says, oh, yeah, what you need to do is bot BC add VNC. So you need to start opening up VNC port, go to this machine and this port. And that corresponds to is what we call a back connect server. Now, this is still one of the preliminary early versions that are out there. So command control server basically runs a DOS program, and it says So if you have 100 different machines, unfortunately right now they haven't automated this one out yet. You have to run 100 versions of this. And it says things like, if you accept a connection on, the bot is coming in on 4600 and then the client is 1091. So it basically means that if you VNC to this IP machine and connect to 4600, you will connect directly back in and see the machine of the client. So there is right now no authentication. So one of the areas that the banks use is, and there generally is an outgoing request that you can actually intercept. So if you do a scan of an intercepted bot, in a lot of cases, you can actually find that port and sit on it and intercept it. So say, for example, I've been, $1 million has been stolen. I go, oh my God, it's Zeus or something. Well, it's going to be very hard to find it. One of the first things you could do, even from outside, is scan my box. And if there's a port that has the NC on it, that's on a really weird port, and you can connect to it, it probably is one. When you want to get into the advanced stuff, and hopefully we'll have some time to play, actually I think we will have time to play with this fun stuff, there's the scripting commands. So the scripting commands they're fun. There's one or two things that I've actually left off here because you can be really mean. One of them is a kill OS command, which is just basically you run it, boom, it blows away your drive. Machine is dead, it is down. Reboot, not too bad. You can be nice and say bot uninstall. You can bot update, which is saying I want you to update it right now. You can add the service, and which is where your back connector, and that's where it goes. One of the fun ones is user execute. So you can run any local file, or you can even tell it to go off and get another file to download and execute. So that's pretty cool. So if you didn't have, maybe you're cheap, you didn't want to pay the extra $500, and you don't have your VNC, type VNC plugin, you can tell the guy, you know what, go off there, download it from this site, and go and install it. And nicely enough, it will do that because it's a bot. User certs get everything that's in there. And one of the things it does as well is you're probably aware that a lot of banks rely on flash cookies. Again, they're starting to move away from them because they're harder to delete, and it automatically captures all your flash cookies. It's kind of nice. You can actually remove the person's certificates, and you can start doing fun things like for the antivirus companies, you can do set user URL block so they can't get there anymore. So you can say, okay, no more McAfee, no more Symantec, no more, antivirus homepage anymore. You can also do cool things like redirecting. So say, for example, you have a very good phishing site, but you don't want to use, and you want to go to like bank one. Well, you can send it to, China bank dot whatever it is. And whenever they type in that URL, they'll automatically be redirected to it. And you can even do cute things like setting user URL homepages, which I think in a previous hacking conference, if people have been hacked by Zeus, they've done that. Naughty people. So before we get in, just kind of what's happened since the version you've got. There's ICE 9 came out. That caused a big stir a couple of months ago because it said we avoid Zeus trackers. Unfortunately, one thing that's very important in the malware world is don't purposely go out of your way to piss people off. And they did that, and the Zeus tracker guys got really, really, really upset over it. And in about 4 hours, they'd figured out how to get around it, so that the ICE 9 guy should have been a little bit more gentle and not boasted as much. It did have better injections though, and they're easier to write, but it had a memory leak, which is not a good thing. Another big thing that changed is the alleged Zeus version 3. Well, I do mean alleged. But the main thing about it, the only thing that's changed in functionality is where it hides the command and control server. So instead of directly communicating it to Cox through peer-to-peer, and it's a little bit, better encryption. They changed the keys a little bit, but it's pretty much the exact same thing. The last one is Citadel. That's the one that kind of made the news in the last couple of weeks. It's a new clone. It's priced $2,400. If you want to get a VNC plugin, it's extra $500. And this is honor amongst thieves. There is an old deprecated command that they brought back where you can actually set the languages that you do not want to work in or that you do want to work in. And these guys being, nationalists, I guess, they said if the language on the machine is Russian, you will not run. I thought that was kind of cute. Another thing that's kind of fun is, when you're doing a web inject, you want to see what exactly your customer sees. You'd like to kind of be able to do that to see, does it look legit? How are they reacting with it? This one will actually make an FLV video file of what the user sees and upload it. So you can see, where you're looking at your thing and trying to figure out what to do with that and whether they clicked on it or not. And it's takes an open approach. This whole thing, so you can now vote for new features if you purchase the product. You can submit trouble and inquiry tickets. I mean, this is a better service than most groups. You can talk directly with other purchasers, so you guys can kind of figure out if you want to do a campaign together. You can create a down payment of 50% if you want a new feature, and they'll get working on it right away. And then you pay the final 50% when it's ready. You get monthly updates, and if you want a demo of the product, they'll give it to you on request. I mean, that is just, welcome to the commercial world. So let the fun begin. We have 3 machines. So we have a command and control server, which is Linux. We have the hacker machine. We've got the home user, of course, the victim here. And some of the things we're going to do is we're going to build the server. And what I mean by building a server is we're not going to actually build it from scratch, but we are going to build a Zeus component. So we're going to build a command and control server and set it up. We're going to build our executable, which is going to be done on our Windows hacker machine. Then we're going to deploy it, stick it on the command and control server. We're then going to, infect our victim, manipulate things, hopefully, and do some of the scripting things like having a look at web fakes, what that means. There's a little section for web fakes. It means you think you're going somewhere, but instead I'm redirecting you somewhere else. We're also going to have a look at scripting things like the back connect, changing the home directory and URL blocking. Any questions before we start? Alrighty. Okay, so I have my little victim machine up, and I'm going to, and of course, a moment to pray to the great demo gods that everything works. Easily identifiable. So pretty much we don't have to really interact with the Linux server, just make sure it runs. Okay, so what we're going to do is you should have your Zeus Builder folder. So what we're going to do is open up the ZSB file. And this is our Zeus Builder file. Now, believe it or not, this thing actually can show you whether you're infected with Zeus or not, provided you know the password. So whenever you're testing Zeus, provided you set your own password, you can just type it in and see whether you're infected. So the password we're going to be using here is, no great surprise, probably Black Hat, and then you just hit refresh, and bot not founded, which means we're good to go. So let's click on our next tab, which is the builder. So what we're going to do is first of all actually look at the original config. Just kind of have a look at it and see what it would look like. Then we can talk about why we changed it. So this is the one that comes with Zeus. And one of the first things up there is the Zeus bot name is BTN1, botnet 1. Anybody want to guess what percentage of botnets are out there are called BTN1? About 80%. So yeah, people should put some effort in here after all. So some of the things that are in here are the timer stats. So there's the URL config. So this thing here is where to get my updated config file. The URL loader, we're going to change that as well. Then we're also going to change where my command and control server is, which is ending in gate.php. Then there's a little backup one. We're not going to use that today, such as the advanced config, which is my backup one in case my command and control server goes down. And in demo lands, of course, machines fail all the time. Hopefully it won't. And then we can start screwing around with some of the things down below. There is actually a mistake in the Zeus config files. Like down at the bottom there's a web fakes section, and it shows you how to do it. Unfortunately, it's actually incorrect. It refers, and this is one of the versions, version 1 to 2, to change a number of things, including some of the way scripting works. And though this is the default version with Zeus 2, it actually is still using some of the old syntax that doesn't work. So let's have a look at a slightly better config that I've worked with that we built last night. So it's going to work through some of it. So the botnet's name is going to be Black Hat. Now the timer config is 1-1, which means that it's going to contact the command and control every minute, and failing that every minute. Again, we just want like sort of rapid communication. Send the logs over every minute, talk to us every minute. The URL config is actually a little Mac box there. And the URL that where it's config is actually, I'm going to create it. It normally ends as a bin, but you can call it anything you want. So I'm going to just call it safe.jpg. Nice innocent name. Remove the certs, yes. And the encryption key we're going to set here is Black Hat. And again, that has to match the master one, otherwise it's not going to work. In the dynamic config, it's where to get the new bot, and we've stuck in where it's going to be. This is our command and control URL. And when you get down to the web filters, I just shoved in there other backup domain for the config. So we've changed a couple of things in here which are worth looking at. So if you can see there, I have an @ symbol around Google. So that means every time I click on something in the Google domain, I will take a picture. I've also got a picture around McAfee.com, and of course, because we're here, Google constantly retwists you to google.nl, so I just shoved in the same thing as well. And it's saying log everything on twitter.com, but there's no @ symbol on there, so that would be anything I type in, it would log. Now for web fakes, there's the first one is an example of Google, which doesn't work, and the other ones should. So basically, when I type in myspace.com, I should be instead redirected to Facebook. The next one is Microsoft.com. Click on that, you should be redirected to Facebook. And then I dig at my old employer, which I like very much. If you log on to Symantec.com, you instead get shoved over to Trend Micro. So, such is the plan, which will hopefully work. So we've done that. So they edited the config. Now we build the bot. And you can see it kind of says, okay. And because I said call it safe.jpg, that's what it's called it. So the whole configuration is now done that. So there's already one there. And if you look, it actually took everything WebEdX as well and took the whole lot. There's actually 111 things compiled in the config file. So that's the config file. I still don't have the bot. Now, what do I do with the bot? I take a lot of the static config and I compile it in. So once I get infected, at least knows where to go, where to get the full config files and what to do. So I build the executable. And this, I just call it bot.exe. And now it's created. So with that, as far as the client is concerned, you're effectively, a lot of your hard work is done. So what I need coming from here is I need the bot file, the JPEG file, which is the configuration, and the WebInjex, which is, in this case, I'm not doing a lot with it, but I could be. And that WebInjex would be, if I wanted to, say, take down a specific bank, or if I wanted to take down a specific company, where I would constantly go in there and steal credentials from them. So my next trick is to get it from there onto my control and command server. Thinking about it? So I've created a little dummy folder in there. It's just blank for the moment, called Zeus. Pick up my files and drop them over. Copy. And now they're in the command and control server. They're not in the right place, but at least they're on there. Like I said, once your command and control server is set up, you don't really need to do much with it anymore. You can do everything from SSH. Yeah, let me try and see if I can do that. I'll actually call out the commands at least what I'm doing. So what I've done is I've moved the files over. So what I've done is I've SSH into the box. I've gone to the correct directory, and I'm just moving it to where my default files are. So I'm basically saying move everything in this folder into. Let's actually make sure I'm going to the right place first. Yes, I'm going to move into var www, which is basically my attack of the hospitality suite there. I'm just moving all my files into the web. So at this point, I've actually just taken those files, which are ready to go, and moved them into the command and control structure, and now pretty much I'm ready to go. So this is our normal user. If you see that it's normally set up to be a blank page, see if I can get out to the web. Hopefully I can get out to the web. You really? That's not very good. Okay, well, let's figure out a new route. So it looks like we might be beaten by the local internet session here. Right, failing that, let's try again. Just try and connect in directly to the normal wireless. Good old technical differences. I guess we should have prayed a little bit harder to the demo gods. Let's see where it comes. Oh, there we go. Okay, for some reason it's decided to work. Hopefully it'll work here too. Yay. Okay, that was strange. It's slow, but it looks like it's coming up. All right, exceptionally slow, but it is kind of slowly working there. So what we've got is, a machine that's just normal, should be able to get out to the internet. What I'm going to do is point it towards the command and control structure. Okay, just making sure I want to check on a few things, make sure the host file is set up correctly. Ah, got it. All right, there we go. Believe it or not, the screen was so tiny, I typed in www, comma, instead of dot, could barely see it. So what we've got here is we've got the Zeus. Now, normally at this point, you'd have a crime pack or something that would install it. When you click it, it literally, nothing happens. And that's pretty much the user experience. It's like, do you want to load something? Yeah, sure, whatever, boom, and it's done. So at this point, Zeus is just very, very quietly, sitting in there and kind of doing nothing. Now, one of the interesting things about running a Zeus command and control structure is generally if you're running it using Internet Explorer, it will not work. You generally have to run it using Firefox. Apparently it doesn't display, but I mean, you won't even get it, it won't even react to you. Okay, so this thing is up. Yay, live. Okay, so once you've uploaded our files, this is the command control structure for Zeus. So it's a web interface. Again, you can run this on anything. Once it's got PHP and MySQL on the back end, it'll run. We built it on Mac OS X, built it on Windows. It's much more stable on Linux. So the control panel, that's what it looks like. If you try and go directly to any other page other than the installer, so if you try and go to the control panel without being installed, that's what you get. Hello, how are you? The other version is a little child with a erect finger at you, kind of going, you shouldn't be nosing around here. Because if you don't know that you've installed it, it's probably not your box. So when you go to controller, and again, these are all files that you have, it's /install index.php, you're asked to set up a few things. So we're going to set up the password for admin as being Black Hat. We'll set up the password for MySQL as being Black Hat, and the encryption key, which is the all-important, all-singing, dancing one, as being Black Hat. You click on this, and generally if you have problems, they generally tend to be permission problems. It takes a while. That's about 50-50 whether it'll work. Oh, there we go. So we have currently installed it. And at that point, you've pretty much got your botnet up and running. So next thing we do is then try and log on to the control panel, which page didn't work a minute ago. And now it's coming up saying, okay, who are you? What do you do? And right now, if you look, we apparently have total reports and database is 1. Okay. Just see what's going on here. Anything exciting? So we'll wait till the bot actually connects in. For the meanwhile, we can go off and hopefully it's properly infected at this point. The internet connection is pretty sketchy, so it's not going to be as successful a demo, unfortunately, I think, as we wanted. We'll enter in some connections to things like Facebook. The good thing about things like this is anytime you enter in a credential whatsoever, Zeus gets it. So whenever you go to a bank, it'll pull it up. All of those credentials, just as you typed them in, are captured. So who's in favor? We take a 10-minute break. I figure out the network and get this thing running. Fair? All right. See you guys in about 10 minutes. I'm out of 4 packets hitting home at this point, but we shall do our best. So if you remember, while we're working on this, just going to go over some of our config files and some of the changes we expected to see in the bot already. So the config file, we made a couple of changes to them. So when the bot takes this, it should make some changes. For example, one of the things we told it to do was here. I said, anytime you're trying to go to Microsoft.com, don't go there. Instead, get redirected to Facebook. And I said, anytime you're trying to get to Symantec, go to Trend Micro. So just trying to figure out where that thing works. And again, the question is at this point, would any of it work? So, Microsoft.com. Well, actually, let's start off innocently over here, over to news.com, which got an icon, but nothing else. So we'll start here, type in Microsoft.com. Hopefully we'll get some internet action and see where it goes. Yeah. Well, we'll give it a minute. So hopefully that's what I should do. While that's working, I'll try and stop this one and try and go to Symantec. Now, another thing that's kind of interesting here is, well, that was the Facebook page. Let's try and just go to a home page. So our home page right now is set to about blank. There is none. So what has happened in the last few moments here is, if you see, a bot has magically appeared. A bot's name has got Blackout, and it's version 2.09, which is the version we have. And it's giving us cool things such as, what's the IP address, blah, blah, blah. So what I can do is I can click here, and hope I can click. All right, there we go. So some of the cool things we can do about the bot, and these are just automatic things in here. I can create a new script for it. I can get the full information, and this is what I really like. It's a real-time screenshot. You just click on it, and that is my screen right now in real time. So it tells you, and you can do that, of course, for any of your bots. So no matter what they're working on, whatever, you just want to see, hey, what are they doing right now at this second? Right-click, screenshot, automatic. But we'll let that run for a while until we get some more data sneaking on up here. So up here, oh, no, it's not. I think we died on that one. Oh, there we go. Microsoft.com up on top, redirecting to Facebook. So that part worked. Symantec.com with a very interesting logo next to it. Let's try it again. Symantec.com, now going to Trend Micro. So you'd use this for things like phishing. Be really, really helpfell. So you can go, wherever the hell you. And the thing is, I didn't type in any IP addresses. You can do that. You can. There's a little section where I can change your host file, but this is just kind of this is a web fake in example there. And you can write wildcards. So you can be Symantec.com, blah 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 blah. You could be alert.bank.com. Going wherever you want it to go. So the good thing is here, web faking works. Let's try and do some fun things like, hey, let's go writing scripts. Scripts are questionable at best, so let's go add a new script. So it gives it a random name. You can give it nice, cool names if you want. You can give it to individual bots. You can say, you know what, I want to give it to all bots in the Black Hat group. And then you have that syntax on the slide that I showed earlier. So let's just try and do some of that. Now, if you remember, we try to get the bot to check in every minute. So hopefully that should work. So the command here is user homepage set, and it uses underscores. So I'm just going to make it run at blackhat.com. When you hit create, you'll see there it's got. So what it says is name of the script, it's enabled, creation time, then it says the limit of sends, whether it was sended, again, English may not be the native language here, and then whether executed or errors. So at the end of the day, you run a script and you're going to get a 1 in either the execute or the errors. And if you had a couple of 100 different bots, then that would change in there. So we'll also add another script in here to do, and this is a kind of a cute one. Again, we'll apply it to the Black Hat group. And you can do things like user, URL block. So I'm giving it a, how many Irish people are in here today? I heard a couple of accents. All right, good to know that in the LulzSec arrests, not everyone was arrested. Excellent. All right, so you've got 2 there, and if you look, one of them was sended already, and one of them has been executed. So that's good. So again, this where the problem is. A lot of the scripts don't execute it because they get a little bit too complex, and if one line breaks, it all breaks. So that's kind of one issue, and the other issue is between Zeus version 1 and 2, they changed. So what I asked it to do was set the home page, which we know is blank, to being blackhat.com. Now we'll figure out whether that actually worked. So if I click on the home page, well, not yet. Maybe I need to shut it first. Close. Yeah, what I've noticed actually sometimes when you're starting at a lot of advanced scripting, oh, there's my home page, blackhat.com. So you can actually do a lot of different things with your device. So that's one of the fun scripts. It's going to go back here. And what I've asked it to do, and it looks like it's sended and executed this one, is I asked it to go off and block a certain website. The website is actually the Irish newspaper called the Independent.ie. So if I type in and sometimes what happens is it'll work, and if it works, it generally means that, like here it did, because I didn't set the parameter correctly. So I said that, but I didn't put the trailing asterisk. So when you want to run a script again, generally what you do is, I'll just run them both again just for fun. There's an option here to say reset. When you reset them, it says, as far as I'm concerned, I haven't sent them yet. So they go back to 00. We'll give it a minute or 2, and then we'll try and see where we go. Now, another thing you can do on here, let's just do and again, this works sometimes. It depends on if we have a live server that's willing to accept them. So you can look at the ports that are there as well. I think it's pretty much working, Liz. Yeah. So you can look at the ports that are listening. We're using a netstat. One of the commands which we saw earlier, you can also do is, which is the backconnect command. So again, we're going to add it to all the Black Hat bots. And how that is, you basically create an outgoing link. You can say bot, BC, which is backconnect, which is that way of tunneling through NAT, add, and you can either say VNC or if you want RDP 3389, then you give it the name of a server, which you might want to go to. We'll just pick for the moment www.blackhat.com. And we'll give it a port for it to go out on. And what that then will do, when that executes, we'll create an outgoing port. And if you're running RDP on here, when you connect to it, you'll automatically come in and run RDP on this device. Now at this point, it looks like one of the other scripts has run. So let's just try and go now to independent.ie again and see what it works. Oh, it doesn't work anymore. So you can literally block at the browser level, and this works across all the browsers. Like so, in the, that website is now gone as far as you're concerned. You can redirect it, you can change it. There's cool commands such as reboot, which could automatically make the thing reboot. You have the cool Kill OS operating system, so we can just blow away the bot. So let's just try and have some, wandering around and see the things that we'd say. So let's go to Facebook. Just try and type in a, make up a silly name. And password 123 we'll say, and we'll log in. Now we'll say no, don't remember it. Okay, that one didn't work. Let's go to a bank. Again, this is a real bank. Type in something, type in a password, type in go. Again, we won't get in, but what we want to do is see whether it whether it was interesting or not. And again, let's see what else we kind of said. I think one of the things we said, we wanted to go and we wanted to watch what was going on McAfee.com. So if I want to watch what somebody's doing. So I basically said every time I click a mouse, I want to get a picture. So I want to click on here, on products. I want to click on security advice. And top 10 tips on mobile security. Oh, there we go. I want to get an ebook. Stop becoming a victim of this guy, because this guy looks scary. Now, do you remember the @ symbol? The @ symbol said every time you click on something which was on the list, I think McAfee was on our list, that take a screenshot. So it'll take a minute or so to kind of wander around, but it's good to see what we've got. So again, we can click on this bot, and the cool thing about the bots is you can rename them, and you can create things like military, banking, corporate, worth stealing, interesting personal pictures, whatever sort of way you're interested in disposing of them. So what I want to look at here is today reports. That's one of the options here. So some of the things here, apparently I clicked on something called Facebook logon, and I also clicked on something to do called Wells Fargo. Now if you look here, that was the login that I typed in, there's the password. So it just captures it right away. So even if things like the banking site, which was HTTPS, so therefore should not have been capable of getting captured. But of course, we're dealing with a keylogger, so HTTPS is completely irrelevant. There's the online wellsfargo.com here, and then this is what I typed in. So, basically passwords and all that completely captured. So when somebody comes in and says, hey, Zeus hit me, I didn't know what happened, you're pretty much dead in the water with it. Now, when you take those pictures, they come up as files. So, okay, so you've got some, and this looks interesting. So these are basically from the bot, and these are various pictures that it downloaded. And these are some of the ones from McAfee. So some of the things I use here for industrial espionage, and that is, if I want to figure out how somebody navigates through a site to get to something interesting, you basically just click this thing. Looks like the machine is thinking about it. But it basically goes through step by step every time you click. So if it's corporate work, would say you're working at secret.com, and there we go. That's where I clicked. You see, it just got the picture of where I clicked in that area. It didn't even get the whole screen, just focuses on a couple of hundred pixels around, and it organizes them by time. So if I went through click, 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 it captures absolutely every single one. Now, originally where this came from was for virtual keyboards. So you're expected to click 10 different things in succession. That would be your password. But this is exactly how to manipulate through when they watch whatever they're doing. So as it is sort of an APT approach, this thing is actually really, really good. I mean, if you think about the advantages of it, rather than just a remote access tool where you have to try and log in and guess. So say, for example, if I'm using Shady Rat or one of the other ones, I have to infect your machine. It's an old technology. Maybe it will get caught and detected, maybe it won't. This one is an up-to-date tool. It's constantly getting updated. And, there's so much money being pumped into this development tool. It's really, really good. It can take multiple pictures and tunnel the way through. So rather than me getting your desktop when you go home at night and trying to figure out, well, okay, how do I get to secret files? What I can end up doing here is taking a screenshot of how you get around every single day, where you navigate on your page, and give me pictures of every single part of it. I can just sort of set up the wildcard as being your whole domain, and every time you click on something on your internal intranet, I get a picture. I see what's there and see whether I'm interested in it or not, and then I can go follow it. All of your credentials are captured, all your key logs are done, and it's a full-blown user experience. So literally, as you go on through your day, any key logs you do, you've got them. If you see a site that sounds like it's interesting, this thing, you can get it to update configuration every minute. Of course, the more talkative it is, the more likely you are to get it, found. But if it talks to you stealthily like every day, you can look at it and go, looks like there's something very important in this intranet site. What I'm going to do is update it with the wildcard and put a bunch of pictures in there. So every time you're in that intranet site, I see what you're actually seeing. Then you've already captured the credentials and you know your path. So as an APT tool, Zeus is really, really good. And literally, you have the source code right there. So some of the great things about it is encryption's great. The whole thing is run from PHP. And with the newer technology, now you can completely hide where your command and control centers are. So for APT, this is actually a really, really good tool. So financial malware, turn to the darker side, even more darker than that. Questions on it? So what we're saying here, just to kind of recap, we've built it, we've installed it. You know how to configure some of the tools on there. I'll give you my slides if those of you who want it, just email me. But it's very, very, very configurable. So you can stop people from getting to places. You can reboot their machines. You can redirect them to anywhere you want them to go. Like HTTPS is completely irrelevant to you because you just completely bypass it at all times. And it's exceptionally stealthy and it's very, very scalable. Question?
I saw in the config file that there were, I think, two domain names, two command and control servers that you specified. There was a primary one, and then if that's not available, there was a backup one.
Yes.
And so they were complete domain names, so in theory they could be sitting on any IP address.
Mm-hmm.
If those two domains got deregistered, would that bot then be out of commission?
For the current version, yes. And there's lots of little ways of putting in other things in there. And there's all sort of advanced ways of mathematically deriving it according to the time. And there's that whole revolving domain name thing. And a lot of those domains right now are up for an hour to 2 hours, and they dump and they move. That's the advanced financial stuff. But yeah, on the version we have, you could probably set up 10 alternative ones because it'll move down through them in order.
Oh, okay, so you put more.
Yeah. Any others? So the question was, can you write the script for one individual bot? You can just right click and the option is write script that will go for that individual bot. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You can send a config to one individual bot or to a botnet group, and you can create and subgroup your own botnets depending on what interesting stuff they're doing. Any other question? Yep.
This is popular and it's continuing to grow. What do you see as some of the features maybe in the future that
Yeah, so the question is some of the fun features coming up. Again, it's going to be, everyone's still going after the command and control. So that's going to be, they're definitely going to change the configuration because a lot of the guys in the anti-malware industry are cracking Zeus 2 configs. So I definitely see, Mr. Diffie was in the room there a little bit earlier. But I definitely think their encryption is going to change, it's constantly change. We're seeing different versions of it that are out there, and the whole hiding and proxying of the configs is changing. I remember years ago, McAfee came up with a cool technology, which was all the machines would talk to each other and figure out who had the latest DAT file. And then based on that, they would all get the latest DAT file. I see this, what they've started to do with botnets now is they're all talking to each other and figuring who's got the gateway out, and then they all proxy through that. So the whole definitely worm-like approach is definitely relevant here. Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn as well, if anybody can track me down. But email address is ken@gladiusconsulting.com. Good question. So the question is the communication TCP based or UDP based? In this version, TCP. In Zeus version 3, the version that came out a couple of weeks ago, well, months ago now, probably 3 months ago, a lot of it is UDP based for initial conversation, and it goes TCP from then on. So it's changing. And that's one of the areas that they're experimenting in and hiding. But it's only for communication, for initial communications with the command and control server. Okay, thank you very much.